Welcome back, everyone. Before we start, I would like to mention again that the Czech translation is simultaneously going on downstairs, so if you want to listen in Czech, you can do that. Kdo preferuje české znění přednášky, může jít o patro níže, kde probíhá simultánní překlad. And now, let me welcome Zuzana Hrášková, who is a cognitive scientist who studies magic through the lenses of cognitive science. And that will be also the topic of today's talk. Please welcome her on the stage.
Hello. I decided to hold this presentation in English, although I'm from Slovakia, because I heard that there are a lot of foreign people coming here. So hopefully my English will be not suffering for you. So magic, ritual and symbol from perspective of cognitive science. As a student of cognitive science, I was always very drawn to topics of consciousness, and on my university I did diploma thesis on topics of magic, which was a bit frustrating because academic ground is not very open to these topics, especially when you're studying such a field like cognitive science. But to clear it out, I'm not here to demystify magic and occult. I would like to, on the other hand, explain magic and its possibilities to scientific world. And I believe that every practitioner should understand the human consciousness because it opens up new doors for other possibilities. Okay, so I start with this quote, which I choose because I am a very passionate lover of music and dance, and I was always fascinated by this hidden order of things which is very present around us. And as this song sings, you can really feel it in the air. So I believe all of us asked this question, how this all holds together, how our bodies holds together, how this system works, what are Mondays, what are taxis, what is Bluetooth, how this all kind of works and it collapses. And science is trying to research this and build this, and as we really see on our everyday lives, everything is interconnected. Our internal system is connected with the external system. Our circadian rhythms, our menstrual cycles, everything is connected to nature cycles, and also society is interconnected, like traffics, laws, educational system. There is no separateness because that is what makes the system holds together. And as my very favorite person from history says, in all chaos there is a cosmos, in all disorder a secret order, which opens up a lot of possibilities when we consider everything is interconnected, and that creates this symphony we see all around us. And this all, we also can, when we start to observe this symphony and order in chaos, we start to realize that there are actually patterns hidden in the nature, there are patterns hidden in our biological bodies, there are patterns hidden between systems, between philosophies, between religions. Everything is kind of mirroring the other, and the more we observe it, the more we understand that everything coexists in this harmony. And from a scientific point of view, because I will now try to explain all these things through scientific lenses and find the correlations, when it comes to the concept of macrocosm and microcosm, in philosophical ways, there is a way called structuralism, which speaks about that much more important than objects are the relation between them. And isophorism, which speaks about the correlation between two systems, like a parallels, like a mirrors. And we can see this everywhere. And I think this is a great step for science to get more closer to this mystical world. So as I said, everything is kind of interconnected. Circadian rhythms, biological rhythms, the rhythms of brain and heart. Also there's a frequency of Earth, it's called Schumann frequency, and scientists try to measure its impact on the human body, and it literally helps our homeostasis, which is like inner balance of the body, to maintain. So we really can't be isolated from the earth, and we are also influencing the earth rhythms. So as we consider this causality and interconnectedness of internal and external systems, there is a question. How could we approach this hidden order of things, this causality, with more active approach? How can we become more active participants in our realities? I would compare this to the soup. Like, imagine your life, your whole reality is a soup you create. All the ingredients are all the variables of the function that at the end becomes your reality yourself. And all these ingredients we interact with them every day. So how can we change these ingredients if we want to change our life? And then that is the point where magical arts enters the chat. So yes. So as I said, I see that science is slowly opening itself up to these topics, but I still believe it's unfortunately a long journey, because it takes time for such a structure to open up to mysticism. But my aim is to add at least a little brick to this gap. So I would like to start with the symbol as a tool. When it comes to a symbol and how it influences our consciousness, it is a representational form. It can be object, sign, concept, it can be image, it can be word, which is a bridge between a mental idea and reality, perceptual reality. We communicate symbols, we interpret symbols, but at the end it's just amalgamation of dots, lines, and shapes, which kind of holds this whole world together. Even like science, linguistics, especially mathematics, even everything architectural, political and cultural, everything on the foundation is created from symbols, which is actually very fascinating. And the symbol is a language of cognition for our brain, which helps us and our brains to understand the world, to interact with it from biological perspective. Also, self and identity is when we approach it from the scientific point of view, is just a symbolic representation. Our names even are just a bunch of letters that holds memory, history, emotional charge. My name means I am someone. If I identify myself with the lecturer, that means that I am giving lectures. So every word which we connect to our identity creates this charge of that at the end creates our sense of reality. And so to name something, for example, emotion, is to give a linguistic translation to our internal process, and at the end to bring it to life. What we are able to name, what we give name to, we birth. And it's with everything. It's with also laws of physics and morality, traffic, time, social norms, ethical frameworks, what we consider as good, as bad. It's all just words, bunch of dots and lines that dictates how society works. So yes, symbol is a very powerful instrument that humanity has ever created. I would even call us Homo symbolicus. And also our brain, when it comes to visual symbols, are very they're answering to visual stimuli, especially to symmetry, balance, and rhythms. I could go very deep into sacred geometry and golden ratio, and Fibonacci sequences and how they influence our brain from a neurological perspective, but I don't have enough time. From a perspective of Gestalt principles, which is a principle that our brain and consciousness seeks completion, seeks a sense of something. It's not about the parts, but the whole creation that the parts create. And so our brain is wired to see the sense and the bigger picture. And when it comes to visual symbols, we really are influenced by seeing them, by the curves, by the lines, especially harmonic proportions. It all can create an emotional response when it comes to answer of our limbic system, but also a negative. And now we go to the ritual. From a scientific perspective of view, a ritual is a symbolic act that we could try to explain to the scientific world like some practice where we use symbolic gestures, symbols, words to maintain some internal feeling. And rituals are used everywhere when it comes to religion, when it comes to societies, from magical rituals to even everyday coffee, even that I'm standing here and this presentation has introduction, core, and ending. It's sort of a ritual. And rituals are nonverbal languages that communicate meaning through form, rhythm, and repetition. The more we do a ritual, the more it becomes us. And so if you would start to drink coffee every day, what would you become? The coffee drinker, maybe even coffee lover, depends. But at the end also, what ritual does from a psychological perspective is that it embodies a feeling. It helps us to embody a feeling and emotion. So rituals are embodied practices, and they really shape how we perceive reality and anchors our belief systems. I would also, if I would have time, go into approaches to consciousness, but I will just leave it here and say that there are many approaches to consciousness, from materialistic to the idealistic, which I am more fan of, and also to mystical and religious approaches. But what they all have in common, that consciousness is not a static thing. It's either art of becoming or experience or the flow. Consciousness is very dynamic. And that's where science currently is, learning that consciousness is actually a never-changing spectrum which interacts and changes every second based on its environment and internal reality. So cognitive science, as I said, see the self and consciousness as dynamic construct. There are also three things with that which I would like to mention: conditioning, autosuggestion, and neuroprogramming. When I was studying cognitive science, we had few lectures on coding. So when I was learning how to code, I found it very fascinating and like an allegory for our brains and minds. That when I write a code, it's like how I write myself every day. And this is what I would say, what we do every day, what we every day repeat, what we identify with every day is how we program ourselves every day. And the same is with conditioning, which is like repetition, trains our neural pathways to shape our brain, which is called neuroplasticity. That's the ability of brain to still change. So even from scientific perspective, there is a chance to fully rewire your brain, to change your brain, and at the end, to change your reality. So yes. Now let's talk more about magic. So as I said, the symbolic creates, and so is it with language. Language and like spelling something is literally like casting spells, because language is cognitive architecture, is the framework of thought, is how we perceive, how we categorize, and how we emotionally respond to reality. At the neural level, the words you used activates your emotional memory, it awakens your neural system. For example, emotionally charged words like love, death, hope, and fear, they create biologically response. If you would repeat for an hour death or fear or misery or suffering, there would be literally measurable change in your adrenal glands and your, I think it's hypothalamus, but I'm not sure, something in the brain will start to produce cortisol. So even from this very scientific perspective, words are really powerful spells we use. And especially collective belief systems, which are even like collectively more charged. The more people believe some words mean something, then the words we use linked to it are more straightened. For example, yes, it's also culturally different what means what. For example, God means something else for every culture, right? And it can be positive, it can be negative. But at the end, from the culture you are, you adopt this emotional charge of the world from this collective belief or we could say from collective consciousness. So, magic and a ritual. When we can look at it from cognitive science and kind of understand what is the role of human consciousness and neurology in these mystical works, and how can we, maybe level up our understanding what is going on when we practice magic from just neurological perspective. From scientific point of view, magic represents applied modulation of informational patterns through intention, attention, and symbolic focus. It operates through symbols, which I said are the foundation of everything. For example, sigils, numbers, words, or colors. Symbol is an informational structure. And this language of magic is like a semantic algorithm we use to achieve some mental level of our consciousness, to be able to connect ourselves to what our mystical work requires. So, for example, names, numbers, geometrical forms, everything is a code for our neural system. And there are also some pictures. For example, this one, I think it's from Lesser Banishing Pentagram Ritual. This is a third pentacle of Jupiter, and I think this is Enochian table. And these all are just, when you see it, and you don't know the context, you can just see the numbers, you can see letters, you can see gestures, you can see notes, you can see sword, but it all carries very, very important meaning for our not only magical work, but for our bodies to also be part of this magical work. This all happens through our 5 senses. For example, color evokes emotional resonance, sound and music can introduce trance states. I am a very passionate dancer of 5 rhythms. If someone knows this kind of a dance, it's a dance where you just improvise. It's like an intuitive dancing. And through this dance, I really understood how the state of trance is really important for magical practices. And this all we can't achieve, for example, just with a drum. It's just a drum, just one, which when we repeat it can do literally magic. Also touch and a movement, this all. And that's why it's very important for a magic practitioner to become a master of his own senses. Then when it comes to imagination, which is really powerful tool and practices, it's from cognitive science, it's very connected to the neuroplasticity, and that's, I think, the closest science ever touched the magic. It's how we are able, through just imagining an object, create a biological feeling. And that's where we are now, and I really hope we will dig more deeper, like the scientific world will dig more deeper, because this, with the connection to imagination, it really gives us possibility to create like inner ritual space, to do a change just through a thought. Then there is the whole chapter about art and magic, but I will not go very deep there. But art is another sort of a ritual, because through art and a ritual we can like create, we can give birth to things like art, like we saw on the downest floor. Yes, that's how you say it is. Art can be really a portal to another world, and all we need is just intention, authentic process, and colors, and suddenly we create worlds. Also, liturgic art, sacral architecture, grimoires, and the music and rhythm, it's all a symbolic work that connects us to something higher. And also, for example, religious sculptures and paintings, they, from a neurological perspective, they have these symbols which awaken subconscious response from our brains. I really like this painting of Mary Magdalene. She's holding a cup, but it's a symbol of the Holy Grail. And this all, there are many, many paintings like Mona Lisa, or like, now I really can't come with any other one, but there are many paintings that have these subconscious messages that really can be like portals. I think there is a field in anthropology which is about this. I don't remember now what, but it's about like just meditation on paintings, on sacred paintings. So yeah, and also music and rhythm serve as an auditory form of invocation. And across cultures, for example, Safi dances, or as I mentioned, a lot of contemporary dances, intuitive dances, shamanic practices, tantric practices. This is all embodied practice for our body, because magic can be really practiced also just through bodily feelings. And for example, especially this what I mentioned, they work with this embodiment, this interface between mind, body, and collective order. Repetitive rhythmic, symbolic actions, they entertain our neural oscillation, regulate autonomic states, and rewire emotional and cognitive patterns, fostering coherence and transformation. Then, for example, initiations or sexual rituals, psychedelic ceremonies, they are all used from a psychological perspective as controlled destabilization of the self. This reprogramming, or like adding a new variable into the whole soup of the self. To dissolve habitual neural patterns, followed by reintegration into renewed sense of self on coherence. Again, connected to neuroplasticity, theta coherence, and emotional regulation within altered states. I use a picture from Masonic initiation, and then there is a Crowley because he was a fan of sexual magic. Then also seasonal cycles and celebration of these cycles from biological perspective helps us to connect what is going outside. If outside is getting earlier darker because we are entering the darker part of the wheel of the year, that means celebrating these special holidays and days, for example, like equinox, can help us emotionally even tune into these changes. I use a picture from a celebration of winter solstice. I was back in Bratislava, part of a traditional weekend, and we were celebrating it, and that's all. But yes, for example, celebrating these special days just from purely psychological explanation help us to stay in tune, to connect. And I believe the biggest crisis of our world is that we are extremely disconnected from everything. Yes, this is what my very materialistic professor said once, but he was very right. What we design designs us. He was trying to explain cognitive science, but he had no idea he actually explained everything and even magic. Yes, I think he wouldn't like me saying this. I would like to speak very shortly about collective belief and the formation of egregores and collective mental constructs that we design, and in the end, they design us. Like what we feed feeds on us, what we consume consumes us. This like never-ending cycle of as above, so below, or what is within is without. And that really is also from cognitive science perspective, because if we look at social entertainment or memetic propagation or religion, politics, fandoms, everything would influence our perception, like an algorithm, even like money system, economics, or pop culture and show business. This all is like a neurocognitive virus that is feeding on us and shapes our sense of self. So lastly, I would like to talk from structure to individualism. So there are these two ways how to approach magical practices. One is more traditional, be part of some structure. One is more like individual, going on the path, like freestyle-ish more. From a psychological and this more scientific point of view, structures really provide more psychological grounding, emotional regulation, and even identity reinforcement, because there is a power in some community, but also on the other hand, it can limit our authentic journey or may create dependence. More of individual path can have this freedom for authenticity, but on the other hand, I think we all know how it's easy to fall for, how to lose the ground, how to stop being so grounded and maybe, just lose yourself in this really deep waters of magical practices. So I still haven't figured myself out which is better. I don't even think there is something like better, but I was really trying to see this from psychological perspective and understand both ways how to practice. But I would very much claim that there is a power in community, and the more people gather, the more powerful things happen. And then there is a pop culture, pop magic, and individualism, which lately I really see that magic is becoming more and more popular, which is great. Also, it can be double-edged sword. But related to what all I said today, if we understand human consciousness, we can do magic from everything. We can be so creative just using our senses or using our bodily responses that the magic doesn't have to then become just the act for the magical act, but just act for ourself, like reinforcement, repeating something, and like a good reminder for us. This is just a fun fact. I was a bit creative also, and I just created this cult. It's more like a group of people, but it was just like a joke, and it really became very famous, which a bit scared me because it was really just a joke. It was in my country, in Bratislava, between young people. I created this cult around onion because I wanted to do a social experiment, like how can people go crazy for something? Let's see. And it really gained popularity, and it ended up on some raves or concerts, inviting me to do before they started opening performances. So I did a lot of public rituals actually with onion. I was very inspired by like real ritual practices. Also, if we go back, it's also from there. I used the symbolism of sword and cup, chalice. Yes, which I don't think people knew what's going on, but they really loved it. And it was just about the onion. And then I stopped doing it, and it was really fascinating for me to see how collective belief can be alive. So that was just a fun fact. And I would end up with the conclusion that life is really a symbolic journey. And we can see it also through tarot, through Kabbalistic tree of life, which from psychological perspective represents this journey of self, journey of, let's say, even individuation, which Jung talks about, the alchemy of the soul, and the journey we walk on. And the symbols are really a tools that helps us to bridge between conscious and unconscious realms. So yeah, that's it. Oh yes, also I would like to end up with a quote of my very favorite writer, Pierre de Lasseniz, which was a member of Universalism in Prague, I think, yes. I will lead you through a land whose beginning and end you cannot trace. I will guide you through a realm in which, apart from yourself and your shadow, you will see no one. Yet even so, you yourself will become the light that breathes meaning into the darkness around you. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for the lecture. Now it's time for questions.
I've got one very practical, and you told that science, especially cognitive science, is meeting magic. And from your personal perspective, what's the way how we can help or speed up the process? As all the magic society or society at all?
That's a great question. I'm asking myself this every day, but I believe in doing research, just doing and writing. And also I wrote myself a note on the hand so I don't forget to say, and it's related to what you asked, that for example, I had idea for this research, which would be amazing. It's to investigate the topic of collective egregores through the phenomenon of synesthesia. Maybe you heard about this. Sometimes you can just say like, oh, Thursday is green, you know? Or like crystals are red, you know? And it's just a psychological phenomenon, but I believe there is a link that you can really feel the energy of the egregore. There is something around it, and then you connect it with the planets and everything. So I think you can be very creative about it. So yes, research.
Absolutely. Good luck.
Thank you.
Who wants to go next? Another question?
I was interested also when you were speaking about dance. Have you investigated Buto as well, the Japanese tradition? I think you would be very interested.
Okay, no.
But I was curious also more generally, like, how do you understand dance magically? Is it about like going outside of your own control or this liminal space, or what do you think?
That's a good question. I would say, for me, dance is a way how to, for a second, dissolve just a bit the ego and more connect full body to the essence. But also, when you dance in a group, there is also this dissolution of self and the group. And I believe you can really, from spiritual perspective, tune more into collective. What happens to me always after these sessions is this my favorite part actually about these dance sessions, the silence, when everyone is just laying at the ground and the music stops. You can literally feel the air isn't empty and we are like one. It's beautiful, and yeah, that's how I see it. But I never heard about the Japanese
Buto.
Okay, I will check it.
I'll take it.
Okay, thank you. It was very fascinating also for me, that it's for someone who is also interested in occult through the scientific perspective. And but my question is, when we will see the performance with the audience?
That's very encouraging. Well, unfortunately, I live in Ljubljana right now, but let's put a pin on that.
Next year here.
Yeah, I maybe as a part of this.
Yes, next year.
Hell yeah. Okay,
Bring it on in.
okay, everyone will bring them in. Thank you so much.